I had so convinced myself that this was just going to make money hand over fist that I didn't believe it when it happened. And it was at that point I just remember being like, what am I going to do? Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of My Biggest Marketing Mistake, the podcast where we transform costly failures into priceless insights. I'm your host, Kacy Maxwell, and we're flipping the script today for this final episode. We're not going to have a CEO come in and talk about their misstep. I'm actually jumping in the hot seat, and you're going to hear one of my own. More on that in a minute. Now, as I said, this is the final episode of season 1. And we've had so many great stories on this podcast. I'm really thankful for each and every one of these CEOs that came on here and shared their story with us and the valuable lessons that they learned. I really hope that you take a minute and go back and listen to each one of these because they each contain valuable lessons that you can use in your business today. Today's quote on failure comes from Dr. Bergelman, a famous Stanford Business School professor, and he said, "It is far better to have understood why you failed than to be ignorant of why you succeeded." Often when we do things that succeed, do we ever stop to ask ourselves the question, why? Right? We keep rolling and we don't really learn anything that we didn't already know. But it's when we fail, when something goes wrong, that's the time where we can stop and ask ourselves the question, why? What happened? Why did it go differently than I thought? And that's where you find the valuable lessons that will make you more strategic in the future. So make sure to take the lessons shared on this podcast and be more strategic in your business today. So as I mentioned at the top of this show, today's episode is about a misstep that I made very early in my career. And now, even though it was very early, it was still a really big, expensive, costly mistake. And now this mistake, I approached it like people approach most mistakes, with the best intentions and using data. I just used data the wrong way. So today I sit down with one of our producers, Tim Hull, and in our conversation, we're going to cover how personal preferences can create major marketing bias, and how data is great, but it can also be misleading, and how important it is in marketing to truly understand your customer. So much to unpack, and I jump in the hot seat right after this. Hey everyone, before we get to today's story, I want to tell you about something cool that we've been working on here at Provisions Group. So I've been a marketer for over 17 years, and so I've often felt the pain of not being able to see what is and what isn't working in my marketing. And while MarTech is supposed to make this easier, it often does the opposite as we cobble together so many different platforms and systems, causing us to lose the crucial visibility that we need to make informed decisions. That's why we created the Core RevOps Assessment to help you get the clarity that you need. Leveraging our core methodology, our team of marketing technologists will work with you to uncover what's happening today and help you crystallize where you're going tomorrow. We start with an audit of your website and CRM to help illuminate the key problems that are causing the breaks in your customer data. Then we work with you to identify and create a comprehensive customer journey, helping you visualize your customer's path with your organization. Then, we create a custom roadmap tailored to your project for how we're going to partner to get this done. All in 30 days or less. We can help you get the clarity you need from click to close and start making better marketing decisions today. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. Okay, so I guess we're just going to start. And normally this is where I open up the show, but I guess since you're taking over and you're interviewing me, I'm going to kick it over to Tim Hull, my podcast producer extraordinaire. So take it away.
Thanks, Kacy. Yeah, so appreciate you inviting me on the show to turn the tables and get to interview you on your own podcast. And so we're going to start off where you start off with every guest that you've had on the show so far this season. And that's, how have you become comfortable with failure enough to talk about it on a podcast?
I don't think I have. Maybe I'm doing this podcast as a way to get comfortable with failure. Honestly, I'd say I'm a recovering achiever. I've always, from a young age, I've always wanted to do things. I love setting goals. I love hitting them. I love doing that. And honestly, for a lot of my life, I have been absolutely terrified of failure. Like that was the end all be all, right? Of that just shuts it down. If you fail, it's over. And so a lot of times I've just kind of, even if I failed, I would somehow present it as a win. Like, oh,
Yeah.
hey, we did, right? Which is kind of the opposite of this podcast. This podcast is like, no, you failed and it's a failure, but let's figure out the lessons. As I've moved through my life, as I've gotten older, maybe I'm just a little bit more reflective. I've realized that like fear of failure actually holds you back from doing anything big.
Mm,
Because if you only do the things that are guaranteed to not fail, you're playing it extremely safe and nothing big is ever going to happen. And so, as I've realized that, and as I talk with more people, I'm getting more comfortable with failure. And like I said, maybe this
yeah.
maybe this podcast is me like pushing myself. Like when I had this idea to say, "Oh, I'll do one of my failures." It was episode 10 and that was forever away. And as we've gotten closer and closer, I've thought, "Oh man, I don't want to do that." But this will be good. It'll be therapy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. You're pushing yourself to make this happen, and we're finally here at episode 10, the last episode of this season. So let's start at the failure. Let's talk, set the stage here a little bit. So how long ago was this? What was your role? How big was the company at the time? Give us a little background.
Yeah, so this was 14 or 15 years ago. It was early in my career, but it's still a mistake that's haunted me for a really long time. So I started in the agency world. I was working on the agency side and then kind of did this hybrid role. And this was my first role with a client. I had gone client side, and so I was a director of e-commerce at a manufacturing company that I would say sub 75 million annual revenue. And they sold, like most of their business was selling into places like a Walmart and a Target and these specialty gift stores. And so I was brought on to lead their e-commerce efforts. And so initially, this organization had two different websites. One was their B2B website where specialty stores would come on and place orders to sell in their store. And they had come up with the idea. So this was still kind of early in the whole e commerce world. They came up with the idea of, hey, if we sold directly to consumers, we make a lot more margin than
Yeah.
selling through Walmart. So they said, okay, let's stand up a website. So they had stood up a website many years prior to me joining, and it was generating some revenue. I would say a small amount for their organization. And so I was brought in with the task of, yeah, keep having this B2B website growing as we do that, but we really want you to come in and fix our B2C. Like we want you to own this sort of high margin direct to consumer business. And that was my task, and that's where the failure happened.
Gotcha. So, as you were brought in, what was the specific thing that was presented to you, and then you found out that was the problem that you needed to start solving to turn this around?
Well, honestly, they had no idea.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
why they brought me in.
Gotcha.
They honestly didn't even present it as a problem. They said, "We've got this website. We want it to grow, and we need you to do it." Marketing master, right? So me being young and excited to be in charge, right? So I think that was the first time I was a director. And so there was a chance to go in and go, man, this is an opportunity for me to make my mark. Um, and yeah, there was hey, you've got a website, you've got a small email list. Just tell us what we need to do. And so I was given almost carte blanche to figure out what to do.
Gotcha. So what did you start to unpack as you were looking at that and figuring out, okay, how are we going to take it from where it is now to where I envision it will be? What were some of the things that you were dreaming about? What were some of the inputs that you were receiving that kind of started as a catalyst to start that move towards that change?
Well, I'm a good marketer, and so I always start with the data, right? I went into Google Analytics and I really wanted to know what was happening on the site, which I would still say today that's a great place to start, right? Really understanding what is happening on your site. And a lot of businesses have issues with getting traffic to the site. We didn't. We had a good amount of traffic coming to the site. People were navigating through the site, but people were not buying on the site. So this was like I said, this was an e-commerce website. So we were selling products on the site, and I noticed, okay, we do have an email list. When we send out an email and they offer discounts, people buy, but that's the only time that they buy. And I started looking through this site, and now this site had been created years before I got there. Like I would say, probably 8 to 10 years before I got there. So it was an old site.
Okay.
Actually, both of the sites that they had
Mm.
were on this, and it was a bespoke software, right? That like homegrown. There wasn't the big like Shopify's out
Mhm.
there that there are now. And so I came in and I started looking at the research and finding that, but then all of a sudden I started hearing things around the organization, and people were like, "Ah, our site is terrible. Our site is so bad." That's what the person who had hired me told me. They're like, come in and fix this site, right? It's got to be something wrong with the site. I would talk to customer success, and they would always have all of these people calling them about, like, oh, your site is broken, or this order, or this thing didn't work, or this. And so I started thinking something's wrong with the site, right? We got traffic. Traffic's coming to that site. I've checked that. I understand, like, hey, we're getting SEO, we're getting this. There's got to be something wrong with the site. And so I started doing some research. And again, early in my career, learning how to think about data, how to interpret data. And I started looking specifically at e-commerce blogs and websites, which is where a lot of marketers get their education. It's not from the university;
Mhm.
it is from the University of Google, and I guess now the University of ChatGPT. But and so I started seeing, like, what are things, if you have high traffic and you have low conversion rate, what are normally things that are wrong, and what are the best practices that you should fix? And one specific area that I found was the checkout.
Mm.
So the checkout flow was about like 8 screens long, which again, got to go back in
Yep.
time. Like
Yep.
that was kind of normal, because you entered your email on one, and then the next one you entered your shipping address, and then the next screen was a billing address, and then you have a coupon code. And so like everything was a screen, everything was a step. And so there was this idea of a one-page checkout. It was new, and it was, wow, this is exciting. And so I was like, oh, that's it. I'll just get a one-page checkout. And so I started talking to people to solve that, and they're like, this software can't do that. It can't do that. And so I was like, well, that's got to be it. It's got to be it. And so if I can't use the software I have to solve the problem, then I need new software. And so that was how I landed on the decision, we needed a new website.
Gotcha. So describe some of those conversations as you're thinking through this and being like, okay, this is the answer based on I'm looking at the data. It seems like this is what we need to point at. And then you're talking to stakeholders of, hey, this is what it's going to cost to redo the website. Um, Tell us a little bit about how that went and how you were justifying that investment and getting that buy-in.
Yeah. So whenever you have leadership, and this is not, I'm not dogging the leadership back then that I was working with, they brought me in because they didn't understand e-commerce. They didn't understand marketing. And so they trusted me to come in and be able to guide them. And so they were looking for me to help explain what we should do and the business case. And I provided a decent business case that now when I look back, there are so many holes that should have been blown in that. But maybe I was just super good at persuasion. And I think part of it was I kind of told everybody what they told me, right? Like when I had come in, they were like, "Oh, we hate this website. It's so old. It's so ugly." And so they're like, when I came back to them and said, "This site is old. This site is ugly. And if we fix it, we're going to make a lot more money." And you know how good a margin that is. They were like, "Wow, yeah, this is great." And so one of the business case things, which it's funny, I hear this. I heard someone on pitch this on Shark Tank, and I remember Mark Cuban like blew them up. He was so upset. And so the way that I positioned it, and I'll tell you what he said in a
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
The way that I positioned it is we've got X amount of traffic coming to the site today. From what I've read, going from an 8-page checkout screen to a 1-page increases conversion rate by X. If we increase conversion rate even half of that, we will more than make up for what we paid. Right? I mean, that logic seems
Yeah.
sound, right? And so on Shark Tank, Mark Cuban said, "If you come in and tell me, do you know how big this industry is? And if we only get 1% of that, we would make X." That is a horrible way to make business and marketing decisions, right? It's actually one I've done a couple different times where I'm like, man, if we just do this tiny increase, it's going to blow up. And that is a fallacy that you've convinced yourself to do something that you wanted to do in the first place. And so I went in and sold at we needed a new website. I went out and figured out I think we were going to use Magento, which is still around today. It's not as popular, but it was gaining popularity. It was open source. There were all these plugins. There was all of these ancillary benefits that we were going to be able to get. Abandoned cart. We didn't even have abandoned carts, right? Like I said, it was an old site.
Yeah, yeah.
We were going to get all of these extra pieces. And plus, if we just had that checkout just go up by, and again, it was like a small percentage. It wasn't a huge increase. We were going to have it. And I remember I put together this entire like 20-page presentation, and I go to Philadelphia where the leadership was, and I get in this meeting and I'm walking through it, and I got 3 pages into a 21-page deck, and the guy was like, "This is approved." And I was like, "What?" I said, "Do you want to hear the rest of my," and he goes, "Are you going to try and convince me not to give you the money?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm good." Okay. And so I look back on that and I'm like, man, I was impacted by the bias where everybody had said this was the problem. He was impacted and the other leaders were impacted by the bias because they already thought that was what the problem was. And I just came in and told them what they wanted to hear. None of it nefarious. None of it was, there was data in it, and there was some logic, flawed, but there was logic there. And so I got the green light to do a very expensive site. It was up where I think it was after all the builds, design, launch, adding in platform costs, all of that. It was around about 150 to 160K for this website. So I got the green light and we started working.
Gotcha. So you got the green light to take this 150K project and advance it forward. Tell us a little bit about some of those other numbers that you were throwing out. You're saying, hey, we're going to increase it by this. What was that going to look like? What were you envisioning of, hey, this is the investment and this is what the return's going to be and this is how it's going to happen and it's going to all go great if it goes according to plan?
Yeah. So we understood, like I said, I understood the volume of traffic coming. We had put programs in place to continue to grow that traffic. So we knew that we assumed that there was going to be a growth in conversion regardless because we had additional plans coming to drive traffic and drive conversions. And we believed not only by that checkout, there were things like abandoned carts, like I mentioned. There were some series. There was being able to categorize it differently. There were you may also likes. Like, again, a lot of this standard e-commerce stuff that we didn't have in the old site, we had in our new site. And so each of those, again, we've said this on the show when we've interviewed other people, but like the CEOs come in and say, it was a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it felt to do this site. It was like, well, that's a no-brainer. Like, we are using outdated old systems,
Yeah.
but the way that we did it and the expectations and the way we thought we were going to pay for it, that was something that was more on the hypothesis and best case scenario side than the certainty. We know it's a guarantee that this is going to happen. And honestly, that's a lot of the way that marketing works. It's a lot of hypothesis. You're looking at data and you're making your best guess. But sometimes data can be very misleading, especially if you have a bias toward a solution in mind. Like if you approach data with you think you already know the answer, the data to support that will all of a sudden magically appear and it'll magically rise to the top.
Yep.
And everything else that may be screaming like, wait, there may be another reason for this, just kind of slowly fades away and it gets quiet and quiet. Nobody can hear it, right? And so then you get everybody singing your choir and you're like, this is going to be amazing. And, it doesn't sometimes turn out to be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously this didn't go as planned. That's, the whole title of the show. So when was the moment that you realized after you're going through this process, you get things going and you're starting to see some feedback as people are hitting the site and conversions are coming in? What was going through your mind at that time?
So there was the process of building the site. So it was a 6-month build. And it was pretty significant. Like we had thousands of products. It was a big e-commerce site, biggest project I had led to that point. And like I said, I'm an achiever. And so I was like, I'm going to nail this project. And so we launched literally on the day that I said that we were going to launch, 6 months from when I said we were going to launch it. I was so proud that we did it on the day that I was going to, that we were going to do it. The site looked great. It wasn't a full rebrand, but it was refreshed. Everything looked new. The products that were in there looked great. Navigation was a lot more intelligent, where people can easily navigate through it. And so I remember leading up to that, I had convinced myself that I turned it on and it was going to be instantaneous. That it was going to be like you turn it on, all of a sudden conversions are just happening. It's like checkout, 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 checkout. Like almost like the cash register.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yes, exactly. So I remember it launching, and I went in to my president at the time, and I was like, "We did it. We launched it." And she was so excited. She was such a great leader, and she's like, now we wait. And I was like, now we wait. We were just so excited about it. And I remember that night, I didn't see most of the orders happened earlier in the day. We launched it at like a 3. And so I didn't see an increase in conversion rate. And so I was like, it's night. It's nighttime. It's fine. It's fine. Big day tomorrow. And so we were waiting like a week to send any email communication just to make sure the site was working.
Sure.
And so the next day, no change in conversion rate. The next day, I think we launched on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. And so then Thursday, no change. Friday, no change. And by that time I was like, I think the analytics are wrong. I think we need to go double check. Like I had so convinced myself that this was just going to make money hand over fist that I didn't believe it when it happened. And I remember waiting. I was like, okay, we got an email going out the next week announcing the new site. Everybody is going to run like they're seeing the Beatles, and they're just going to check out this new site, and it's going to be amazing. And we sent the email, and it performed pretty much like every other email had. And it was at that point, I just remember being like, crap, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And again, I doubled down. I'm like, there's got to be something wrong. Like this site is so much better. It's so much easier. It's so much smarter. Like you can get through all this stuff. What is like, why is this not converting? And so I spent the next 2 months trying to figure out a way to fix it. Like I tried, we started doing the abandoned carts. Abandoned carts didn't increase it. We tried to do the referrals and recategorization and retargeting and all the standard things that can normally work in marketing and especially e-commerce. And I mean, some of it was working some, but not to the levels that we needed. And so it was not until I really started digging in with the actual customers that were coming to this website that I realized the error in my thinking.
Gotcha. So yeah, so as you're going through this process, you were handed $150,000 to take this 6-month project and carry it to the finish line. You hit the deadline. It launched. It looked great, but nothing changed. And then you started talking to customers, and what were they saying?
Well, the customers, I started getting some customers on the phone and talking to them, and I realized quickly. So, like I said, we sold into Walmarts, and it was kind of like scrapbooks and baby books and journals, and I had kind of looked a little bit at the product mix, but I hadn't dug deeply into the product mix. And then when I did and started talking to customers, I realized that the main reason that people were buying from our site is they either couldn't find that product on Amazon or they had just been shopping there for a long time and they were all 95 years old, and that's where they got refills for their photo albums. When I looked and I saw the majority of sales on that website came from refills. Not from the books themselves. There wasn't a ton of photo albums. There were some, but they were these refills, and you couldn't get them on Amazon. And so everything else that was on the site that I thought, well, they just can't find it. They just don't know it's there. It wasn't that at all. And it wasn't the checkout process. It was, I didn't have a product mix that was comparatively lower to shopping at an Amazon or shopping in a store. And so when I was asking people, I started doing some surveys of like, why don't you buy? And they're like, well, your shipping is too high and I can get cheaper shipping at Amazon. Right? Had nothing to do with the website. And as I started to uncover all of these reasons that they were not shopping with us, right? They were putting stuff in a shopping cart, and then they were going and buying it at Walmart, or they were going buying it at the store, right? Or finding it on Amazon, but they were kind of like price comparison. And we had to be the higher price because we couldn't undercut the people that we were selling to on the other side.
Yeah.
And so, but they didn't want to do discounting. And I didn't do any of that type of research. I didn't talk to customers. I didn't really understand who was coming. And so I made an inference based on data that I saw that was tied to a bias that I had with everybody else, and made a decision based on that versus really talking to my customer and saying, is there something else that we should be focusing on this site? Like, one, is this site viable? Like, is it knowing the constraints that we have, is it really viable to go out and compete? You're always going to have a higher price. You're going to have higher shipping. You can't discount. Like, what are the other things? And again, there's other tactics that you can do. And a lot of businesses have figured that out, right? Where you can buy directly from me. And some of it is, I mean, Apple sells a lot of phones on their website, right? That's a different business model. It's a different type of device, different type of following to a random baby book or a scrapbook or a journal that has absolutely no branding on it. So that was one of the biggest unlocks that I had was, yeah, you can get data, but if you don't check your biases and really talk to your customers, you can use those visits and sessions and exits and bounces, and you can use all this data to justify whatever you want, and you could make some really expensive, bad decisions.
Mm. Yeah. So now, as you reflect on this and you're looking back, what do you think you would have done differently if you knew what you knew afterwards? Would you still have done anything with the website redesign, or would it have been something completely different?
Well, the interesting thing is I had never really heard or been a part of conversion rate optimization.
Hmm.
Um, I had never been I hadn't done a ton of customer research to that point. That's not something
Yeah.
that I had done at the previous companies. It was kind of like, hey, you do a thing, send some emails, blast it out there and hope for the best. So knowing what I've known now over a span of 18, 19 years, yeah, I would first start with the customer.
Mm.
I would first really start understanding who's actually coming to my site today, not just the traffic sources. Like I did that. I knew how many people was coming from SEO, like what pages they were landing on. I saw all that. I knew all of that, but I never got any of them on the phone until after. I never really surveyed them to understand their buying patterns and why they were or why they weren't. I didn't realize until I did a survey that most of the people buying on that website were 65 plus.
Mm.
When that came back in the survey results, I was like, oh, okay. And the reason we were getting so many complaints and everything about the website is because they were 65 plus and they were not awesome at navigating technology, right? Not all of them. A
Yeah.
lot of great technology savvy 65 plus year olds. But when I look back, yes, I would do the same deep dive I did on the data. I would do the same research internally. I mean, people have been there. People are going to have ideas. I mean, I've had that in marketing my entire career. I come into an environment where I'm brought in to do a specific thing as a marketer. I'm to help grow X, and everybody in there has an opinion on why it's not happening
Hmm.
and what needs to change for it to happen. And it's very easy if you are not careful to fall into that and know like, well, this will be an easy sell if I just do the things that they said. I talk about that a lot with hiring super junior marketers to be a sole marketer at an organization. Most of the times they're coming in, they're just wanting to make the C-suite happy. And so the C-suite, like I said, has opinions and says, go do this thing. This is what it is. Or they send you, hey, a competitor did this. We should do it.
Mm.
And so the junior marketer just wants them to be happy and wants to keep a job. So they go do the thing. Right. And that's not what you need. You don't need a marketer that is just going to tell you what you already know. Cause then why do you need a marketer in the first place? Like, you know what's wrong, right? Just go do it. They could have gone and hired an agency to just create a new
Sure.
website.
Yeah.
Why did they need to pay me and the agency to do this? But you need somebody, whether it's a fractional leader or somebody with enough tenure to come in and say, I know everybody thinks this is the right thing, but I believe it's X. And sometimes they do align. Sometimes the obvious thing actually is it's the Occam's razor. Sometimes the most obvious thing is the actual thing, but that's not always the case. Looking back, I would say take that, take all the bias, take all the things, and come like put it over here as a maybe, right? Not as a guilty until proven innocent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Unless I can find something that says this is wrong, this is right. So
Mm.
that's how I would approach that slightly differently if I did it again.
Yeah. So as we close, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this as business owners are working with their marketing team or working with fractional CMOs and such. What are some good questions that they should be asking to help make sure that mistakes like this of having the fallacies, having the biases aren't creeping in too much, and we're keeping keeping all these sources of data coming in of the customers and digging in what's happening on the website and all of that. What are some good questions that they can be asking to make sure that they're not going to run into an issue like this in their business?
If I'm a business leader and a marketer is bringing something to me, I would always play the devil's advocate, not to be a jerk, not to be difficult, but to poke holes in the thinking, right? Like as a business leader, it's your job to make sure that everybody is seeing it from all perspectives. And one of the things of presenting to a non-marketing person is they're going to immediately have a different perspective than a marketer would have.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so you asking questions of your marketer is not a bad thing. Now, the types of questions and the way that you ask those questions, like, help me understand how you got to this outcome.
Yeah.
Let me see the data. Is there another way that that data could be interpreted? What have you seen from customers? Do you have qualitative data and quantitative data? Where has this idea come from? Where has this percentage come from? Because a lot of marketers, like I said, will go to the University of Google. And again, marketers are really good at talking in generalities. Like they love to present their wins as if it is a universal truth. But when anybody else makes a comment on marketing, like they'll get an email from their CEO and they're like, "Hey, the competitor's doing this. Do you think we should?" Marketers get so mad at that. They're like, "Why do we think it's going to work for us just because it worked for them?" But then they do the same things.
Yeah.
It's the exact same things, right? And so uncover, did they go to Google and is there some blog that is saying, if you do this, it's going to work? Or is it somebody on LinkedIn? Or is it somebody else? Like try and dig to where they came up with that idea so that you can stress test it. And again, most of what I do, I now call a test. In any part of my organization, there's people on my team that will laugh about this because we laugh because every time we try something new, we're like, it's a test. Because we don't know. We think it's the best idea, but we don't know. There's so much lack of certainty in business and in marketing that to go like, well, this is the next guaranteed thing that's going to work. Here we go. We're going to do it. No, it's like, yeah, we're going to test and we're going to figure out, did it work? Did it work like we thought? Not? Do we need to change, et cetera? So that's I would push in as a business leader and don't feel bad about it, but also push in to make sure that they're to that level, not that you communicate you don't trust them. Like if you question every thought that they're doing and everything, it all of a sudden is like, well, they don't understand marketing and they don't trust me. I'm just going to give them what they want to hear. Because that's the like one thing that you always need to think about is like you're not the customer. So if the website doesn't fully make sense to you, that might be okay. Unless you are buying from that site, unless you are the customer, if something is happening that doesn't fully make sense for you, that might be okay. And you need to be able to trust that just because it doesn't make sense to you, it still might be the right thing for your customer.
That's good. Good insight, Kacy. Thanks so much for allowing me to interview you today on your podcast and getting to unpack your failure and talking about all of the things that played through that and what you've learned over the past 18 years since that happened. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm only a little sweaty about it, and I do feel good. Is this what catharsis feels like? This is good. Thanks again, Tim. So that's a wrap on season 1 of My Biggest Marketing Mistake. I hope you enjoyed these stories as much as I did. Now, if you could like or review wherever you get your podcasts, that would help a lot. And make sure to subscribe so you know when season 2 comes out. And just remember, failure can be a powerful tool, so don't be afraid to make a mistake every once in a while.